This
thing, and
conference
also
will now be recorded.
we'll be going through the development, and I really want or like wish you guys to do more hands-on. Okay, so in that
Yes,
way you
yes.
will be more comfortable. You'll be more comfortable in doing the exercises or any other development. Basically, since you haven't have any development experience, I really wish you do the hands-on, like in the classes. Okay, all right.
Correct.
So you said you do have the developer account. Am I correct?
Yes, I am having. Yeah.
Okay, you are having the developer account. Okay, that's good.
Yes,
That's
yes.
good. All right. All right. So let's start off with the like a basic of what is the architecture and everything, and then we'll move towards the programming. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
So basically, so we had the two versions of Salesforce. We all know it's going to be like classic and the lightning. Okay.
Yeah.
So as we discussed in the previous sessions, that the classic is more of the MVC oriented architecture, like meaning model view controller, whereas the lightning is of the component based architecture.
Component
okay.
based.
So when we're talking about the Apex and the Visual Force, it's basically the Visual Force. They're all blended together within the classic. Okay. Component is going to be in the lightning. Okay. The Visual Force was there in the classic time itself, it was available in the classic. Okay. So I would like to share, explain, okay. So this is what it's going to be model view controller. When you say model view controller, what is the view, what is the controller, and what is the model? Okay. So when you see here in this diagram that I put together, this view is the Visual Force page or components or the standard pages. So meaning, what are those? When you log into the Salesforce, so this is the lightning. Let me switch to the classic view, and now you know how to switch to the classic. All right. Yes. So yeah. So when you see here, this is the view. Whatever you see here in the screen, this is called the view. Any event or any events that is happening on this screen on the UI. This UI is nothing but the view. It's bringing in the data. If you go to the home, this is the home, and we can even go if you go to the accounts, you can see the account detail, or the recent accounts or reports related to the account or anything. Any of these buttons, interactions, all those things are called the UI. So basically, when we're talking, this is called the view. View is nothing but we are visually seeing it, and that is the UI, user interface. This is where the interface where the users are interacting. And how do we develop the user interface in the Salesforce? With the help of Visual Force pages. That is what the Visual Force pages is all about. So I just want to explain you what is Apex and what is Visual Force and what is the difference between the Apex and the Visual Forces. Okay. So let me open up the notepad. And so it's we are talking about the MVC, right? So the first one is we are talking about the view. That's nothing but the Visual Force.
Okay.
Right. So here, if you see it here, these are nothing but the standard pages. When you are clicking on these accounts, and then when you want to click on new accounts, something like these are the standard pages. They gave the page templates, and it's all predefined. It's coming out of box. You don't have to do anything at all. As part of the admin, you can create a record type, or you can assign the page layout to the object, and it's going to give. And it's all developed within the standard pages based out of the Visual Force. And you can even do the customization. And you can create your own components, and the customizations can be done as part of the Visual Force. And that is what it's called as the customized pages or customized Visual Force. Okay. So that's about the Visual Force page components or the standard pages. So that's the view, right? So the next piece is the controller. So this is where the Apex programming is coming. So what is the Apex programming? The Apex programming language, it's the Apex programming is similar to Java syntax. Okay. So the syntax is going to be similar to the Java. So do you have any experience with the Java, or what language you have experience when you know the basic things, or you just know the basic things? Oh, Java which is good. That uses Java-like syntaxes. It's going to be very helpful for you, and I will take you in the right direction so that you understand everything clearly. Okay. And then to deal with the data, it's going to be some sort of stored procedures. Okay. So what this is whenever the view or any events like, on click event. For example, when you click on the new, you are creating a new, right, new accounts or new opportunity or new lead or new case, anything like that, you're just having the interaction. Or like when you're clicking on the recent records, like, you're just, as a user, you are going and interacting within the user interface, which is the Visual Force page, right? And that needs to do something. Like, when I click on the button, it needs to do something, right? I mean, if you create a new and then submit the button, it should populate all the data, collect all the data, and then save it in the database. And similarly, when you're clicking on, like, individual records, see, for example, I'm going and clicking on these accounts, and these are the accounts. I'm clicking on the gene point. It's fetching all the data from the database, and then it is displaying the results here. So that middle piece, which interacts with the database layer, is nothing but the controller. That's where we are using the Apex. Apex is not something like visually represented. The Visual Force is the one which is visually represented. So this is just the HTML or, like, the Visual Force pages, which will be in the background. It's like a HTML markup language. Okay. And Apex is the controller which controls the action performed in the user interface, and it's sort of bridge between the Visual Force and the database.
Okay.
So do you understand, like, what is the controller is now?
Yes.
So that is where we're using. There are, like, out of box standard controllers, and we are also having the custom controllers.
Okay.
So that's where the Apex will be used. So you might have, when you're coming into the development world in Salesforce, you will hear most frequently, like, two, like recent days Lightning, ignore the Lightning, we'll talk about it later. You will most frequently hear these two words, Apex and the Visual Force. Now you sort of understood, like, what is Visual Force and what is the Apex. Is it clear?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So the next one is the model. The model is the one which is the underlying database layer. Like, okay, so when we're talking about the database, it's all like, where the data is stored. We need some sort of format or some sort of bucket for the data to be stored. So, for example, like, if you want to create an account, all the records of the account should be saved in a table. And that table, the table schema is nothing but called as an object. As an admin, you know that, how to create, what are the standard objects that is available within the Salesforce, and you can even create your own custom objects, and you can put all your fields in it. So whenever you create the data into the database, each row is called like a record. In the object, each record, so the bunch of records are like, a group of records combines together and then creating the object. Object is nothing but a skeleton, like, for example, when you go to, for example, so we have talked about the visual, and the controller, it's the Apex, and then now we are talking about the model. So here if you see, like, for example, if you look at the accounts, there will be like the list of fields in the accounts. So this is going to be the name of the object. So this is the object name. And then we'll be having, like, set of fields. So what are the fields for the accounts? Like, like an account will have its name, address, or like, account ID, some sort of things like, address, like, the country, or like, some sort of fields, like all these fields, like, all these fields are going to be as part of the object. Right? So each field will have its own data type. Each field will have its own data type. For example, if it is like name, you don't want to have the integer. You don't want to have the integer as part of the name. Okay, the name is always a string. What is the describe? It's not going to be an integer. It's going to be a string. It's always going to be the string value. So similarly, excuse me, if it is going to be like dollar amount, or like, the amount or anything sort of things, it's always going to be the integer, or like, even it could be like double. If you want to specify it as a double, like, with the decimals, it's going to be like double. Or if it's going to hold a really a lengthy number, it's going to be even a long. Okay. So, and for example, this account, right? Account, or like, account has its own contact. For example, we talked about the account, and we talked about this field, right? There will be one additional field called contacts.
Related
Contact.
list.
Related list. The contact will be of data type called object.
Yeah.
So this object will have reference to another object, the related object. So these are called the like long. Even it could be like if you want to save the data, it's going to be like date or like date time kind of thing. Like you can declare those variables. We'll write a simple program today with all those primitive variables. Okay. All right. So these are called the primitive data types. These are called the primitive data types in the. Hey, just let me know if I'm going too faster. Usually I don't go this fast. Usually I don't go this faster because I start from the very basic thing. Since you are familiar with all those things, I don't want to spend time on talking about the same thing and wasting time. So that I just want to make sure that I'm taking you in a right bandwidth. Okay. Just let me know that, Karthik, I have a question. Just can you a little bit elaborate? You can stop me and tell me anything. Okay. So let's make it interactive. No problem.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
So these are called the primitive data types. Okay. So with additional to the primitive data type, we also have other data types called the object. Okay. So for example, the account itself, the account can have the contact. For example, the contact, right? Whatever I'm saying, like contact, the contact will have its own field. Contact will have its own field. It will have its own field, like contact name, contact number, contact ID, something like that.
Correct.
Contact ID or like where are they located? Like it could be like a company name for the contact, something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Company name, anything like that. So if you see here, this entire object will have one row, and that can be associated in the contact.
Okay.
For example, you're having the accounts as an object, right? Accounts as an object. Like, for example, I'm saying that account. Okay. I'm having let's name like like one company, like like let's take it as Reliance. You're from India, like I just want to use the company that is in India so that you are familiar with it. Reliance is an account for them. Okay. And it has its address, or like it has the city as one of the field, and it has like Bombay.
Yeah.
So the name is going to be the Reliance, and it is located in the city Bombay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the account ID, for example, account ID can be like 00123 blah 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 thing. And now coming to the contact. So since you are selling a product to the Reliance as an example, okay, so you need to know somebody in the Reliance so you can contact them. You can't just manage the accounts. Like you have to mix the data with the various objects. So your account is Reliance, and you need to know somebody from the Reliance to contact. Say for example, that could be Pratap, the contact. So if you see here, this is the object.
Okay.
This is the object. This is the object, right? This is one of the object, right? So this is object of type contact. And in the Salesforce, with additional to this primitive data types, this data type is called as S object.
Okay.
So with additional to the primitive data type, we are also talking about the object as another data type.
Okay.
Object as another data type. Okay, because whenever you declare the name, address, whatever, how to declare your integer, dollar amount will be like integer double, or like name will be like string. And if you want to have like release date or publish date or close date, or like date the account was created, something like that will be in the format of date. But if you want to associate the contact, it is going to be of type object. And in Salesforce we call it as S object.
S object. Okay.
Okay, so this is what it is called as S object. Okay. All right. So these are all the data types. With additional to this, like now you understand like how these two objects can be related, right? Accounts and the contacts. How these two can be related. Accounts and this is the contacts, right? This is a contact. And the contact Pratap will have its own details. Like contact fields will have like contact ID and first name. Sorry, you cannot have the space in between, like first name and last name, address, or whatever, like phone number, all those things.
Okay.
All those things will be in the field. So these are the related fields of object type contact to the accounts, which are associated to the accounts. Okay. So, all right. So these are the data types, primitive data types. With additional to these primitive data types, and we talked about the S object, and there is also like another object called collection. Okay. Some more data types. Yeah, I'm very. I just take my training classes as very casual flow. So that's where we can explore a lot and we can discuss a lot, and whatever comes in my mind, we just discuss. It's not like a specific pattern reading through the PowerPoint or like going through the same stuff. Okay, that's not the way of training that I provide. Like so that we touch each and every concept in depth, so that you can make sure that you understand completely. And then, we'll move forward. And it's not like a specific pattern of just going through reading through the slide. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Hope you're fine with that.
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay, cool. Okay. So, and then there are like some more data types, like, what are the other data types that we have? Like some more data types. It could be like, let's talk about some collections. Like if you see the collections, it could be like, so in Java, we used to call arrays, right? Arrays.
Yeah.
So what is the purpose of the array? To store multiple data, to store multiple data of various data types. Why I'm saying the various data types is, for example, the list of accounts. The list of accounts will hold multiple objects.
Yeah.
Okay. Say for example, or like list of names will have multiple names of type string.
Okay.
So the list can hold multiple values of various data types. It's not just the list will have only the names or the list will have only the integers. It can have any data type. It really depends how we declare. It really depends. It really depends how we declare the variable. Initially, how it really depends, like how we declare the variable, and then initialize the variable. If you say that hey, this array list can hold only the integers, that list will have only the integers, or this array will have only the integers. Okay. With additional to the arrays and lists, we also have like map and set.
Yeah.
The map. These are nothing but the collections. Same collections will be. So all we will do with the collection object is like just dumping or like pumping the data.
Okay.
Pumping the data to the collection objects and retrieving the data from the collection objects. Okay.
Yeah.
So with this, like like we will go through this with a simple example so that you'll get to understand, like map can be like unique, or like we can only store the unique values and all those things. So we'll go through that when we just do the hands-on with this data types.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is the data types. All right. Now, any questions so far?
No, nothing.
Is it all clear? With all the data types and everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So since you are new to the programming, like let me just talk like 5 minutes about the Apex programming. So you want to start with Apex programming, right? So that So this could be for like any programming language. This will be the same, but there are some differences. That is why I just told you about the S object. S object, you will not be able to see it in any other. In the Salesforce world, you can see this as S object. Okay. All right. So, I mean, we already discussed that it's going to be a Java like syntax and all those things. All right. So, with additional to that, in general, because I did not want to tell the same thing which you already know, what is Salesforce? Salesforce is a CRM, all those things. Since we have already done with the admin and everything, you must be aware of it is all hosted and it's in the cloud and all that. And I don't want to talk about cloud computing or like infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service. So we are not going there. Okay? I just want to be honest with you. I just want to tell upfront. Like if you have any questions, you can ask me. Like okay, so Karthik, can we talk about that area? In that case, I'm going to give you. I can elaborate you about this particular area. Okay, I'm not getting that. I'm directly jumping onto this Apex programming. Okay, all right.
Yes, Karthik.
So we know that the Apex programming is all like it's all hosted in the cloud. Like even when the Apex is saved, it compiled and executed in the server.
Okay.
So it's hosted. So when you just save the Apex program, it is all compiled at that time, compiled and executed on the server. Okay. You don't have to maintain or like you don't have to manage any of the servers or any of the servers or any of the infrastructure for it. So everything has been taken care by the Salesforce.
Okay.
And it's also this will be one of the interview questions, like how the Apex code will be compiled. So when you save, like it's going to be compiled. You don't have to run any specific command to get compiled.
Correct.
Like what do you use in Java? We use Java C, right?
Yeah.
We use Java C to compile, and then we use Java to run.
Yes.
So these things are not there in the Apex. So I'm just since you are from the Java background, I want to just compare this with Java so you can understand a little bit better. Okay. There is no command to compile, or there is no command to execute or run. Okay. So it's all compiled. On every stage. Okay. Also, so this Apex is the object-oriented programming. So when we say like object-oriented programming in Java, the same thing, like, what is all the object-oriented programming? Like we'll be having the classes and we'll be having the objects and we'll be having like, we will have the interface. We'll talk about like what is interface and how we can implement the interface and all that. It's too early to talk about the interface. I'm just telling them it's an object-oriented programming in general. What is the main purpose of object-oriented programming is the inheritance. Inheritance, right? Yeah. So what is inheritance? The inheritance is nothing but inheriting or like getting the property or the attributes or getting the similarities or like getting the properties of one object to the other. Or like inheriting, like okay, so we inherit our properties from our parents and grandparents. Something like that. They inherit all those properties of the class to the child class. Okay, so that's called the inheritance. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So and then so Apex is called as it validates the reference to objects at the compile time. Even at the compile time, it is going to, when we save it, it's going to throw an error. Like in case we will just do one little program today or like a little coding today, and we'll reproduce like how the error is going to pop up. When you save it, it will just compile and then it will save. It's called like strongly typed. Like it validates the references right away. Okay. And moreover, the Apex is like it's the Salesforce clients, and it's proven that Apex is running on the multi-tenant environment.
Okay.
Multi-tenant environment. Okay. So meaning, what is multi-tenant? It's running on the multi-tenant platform. So we don't want to have like the entire Apex to run on one machine. Like if it is just going to that machine is going down, your entire program will be like you lose the service. Okay. So like basically it runs the code on the multiple machines, so the multiple copy of it, and by enforcing the limits. So it will prevent the code from the monopolizing the shared resources. Meaning the Salesforce does share the resources across various environments or across various servers. Okay. So that's why it is called like it's in a multi-tenant. It's not like in a multi-tenant in sense look like it's like a big building, or like the servers are stacked like a big like high-rise building with so many apartments, like where there are like so many tenants are living. It's not like a single individual home. It's like an apartment. So that's why the servers are stacked. It's a multi-tenant environment where the resources are shared. Whenever we are connected to the databases are shared. Like if one database goes down, the other database will still serve you. So that is why you are just having the 99.9% of uptime.
Okay.
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 So I'm just telling you some highlights of the Apex programming with additional to the Java. But because when Java is not, so when you compare with Java, Java does need the compilation and it needs the runtime environment. We are using the command Java, C and Java, and still Java is the object-oriented programming, and also but Java needs to have your own environment, or it should be hosted somewhere in the cloud where we manage it. But the Apex is all like completely different, and it's in the cloud with the multi-tenant environment and all this. Okay. One of the key things is like it's by default, it's integrated with the database.
Okay.
It's integrated with the database. So, for example, what do you do to connect to the database in Java?
A database dot get connection, many steps.
We create a connection pool, and with the drivers, we need to specify the drivers.
Yeah.
And then we need to use either prepare statement or SQL statement, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And then the driver manager will take care of it.
Yeah.
The driver manager will take care of it. So in that case, it's going to be like either Oracle pin driver or there are like so many drivers which will be taking care of the driver manager to connect your client or like server code to the database server. Connection that gets string or anything like you have to do. You have to create all those things. There is nothing like that in the Salesforce. So you can literally write your code select stars from table name, which is going to give you the results.
Okay.
By default, were you aware of this before?
Yes.
It's integrated with the database. The Salesforce is integrated with the database.
Yeah,
meaning you don't have
from past 15 days I've been trying many codes simply on Apex. I have created a developer account, and in developer console and all I used to write the code. So that is when I came to know that we need not have to do any connection for database, and directly if we start from account, then we get all the account details like that. We need not have to connect anything. That is when I came to know. Yeah.
Right. So basically, if you see Apex is very easy to use, and then it's easy to test because it's directly connected to the database.
Yes.
And you can even do the where we used to doing the Java, we used to have the version controlling any Git repository, or it could be the SPN, or it could be the olden days I used to have one more thing. I forgot the name. It's not top of my head. It's like SPN and then the Git. And in the olden days I used to have a VSS, I think Visual Source Safe. I think. I don't know if you ever heard of that. I'm talking about 10 years ago. I used to have this Visual Source Safe. So that's where we check in our code and check out the code and everything. But it can be, but the Apex and the custom code in the Apex can be saved against the different versions of the API, and they can be saved with the different versions. Okay. So these are all it's more of a data focused. The Apex language is more of a data focus and everything. Okay. All right. So that's about the Apex language. And I mean, so the one thing that you talk about, the one thing that you need to know about Apex language is it's like other languages. It has its class interfaces, properties, and collection, and all those things. It has its own expressions, variables, and constants, and everything. And even this Apex language has its own conditional statements. For example, what are the conditional statements you have?
Why, for.
Yeah, if else, even if else, if then, or if else statements. So these are all the conditional statements, and for loops or the whiles. So these are the conditional statements, like other languages.
Yeah.
So it does, the Apex language does differ from the regular languages like Java. So what are the things that differ from the other languages from the Java? Can you tell me how is it different from the Java? We discussed a lot of things related to the Java. We compared with Java and everything. What are the things that you can say? It is different from other languages. It's unlike from other languages.
First thing is, it is we need not have to have any particular commands for running it. It is auto compiled. Once
Mm-hmm.
we save the code, then it will be compiled. The
Mm-hmm.
second one being we need not have to connect to database. It is already connected, and we just need to fetch it from the database or put it
Mm-hmm.
into database. Those are two. Then we need not have to maintain the server in general. Like it is already
Right.
done through this what the Salesforce itself. We need not have to worry
Right.
about that as well. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, these are the
That's good.
things.
Like, yes, you are following me. Like, so it's all the cloud-based development. It's stored, compiled, and executed in the cloud, and no need of any connections to the database. And it is very easy to transaction-based. Like, it can be. I mean, we can do the transaction and we can roll back easily. And
Yeah.
with additional to that, the one thing that you missed is like, we can versioning of the custom code that we develop.
Oh, sorry.
We can version. I mean, I compared with the Visual Safe, or like I compared with the SVN and the GitHub, right? Because we need to have a separate repository for the version controlling. Whereas the
Yeah,
Salesforce
yeah,
does provide the versioning.
yeah. Okay, okay.
Remember, we were discussing about that. So
Okay.
these are the key features of the Apex. One of the things that we need to do is like Apex is a case insensitive language. It does not. You can use like uppercase or lowercase or anything. It's all the same. It all means the same to the Apex compiler. So
Okay.
it doesn't really matter like either you write the code in uppercase or the lowercase or anything. Like it's like case insensitive language. It's one of the interview questions that most people ask. Like the basic levels of programming.
Okay.
Right. So hey Srivatsa, Akshit, sorry, Akshit, right? Yeah, Akshit, yeah. Hey, Akshit,
Yeah,
sorry. Hey, all right. So, hey, Akshit, so we were just talking about like I was explaining like let's take like 5 minutes of recap to discuss like what are the things that we saw. So I was just explaining like what is the we have like two versions of Salesforce. Okay, so have you done any of the development before, or it's your first development? This
yeah,
is going to be your first development.
I've done almost 1 year of development.
1 year of development. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm aware of the basic concepts, but not very good in it.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. Yeah. So so we were just talking about like two versions, like the classic and the lightning, and the classic is all built based on the model view controller, and the lightning is like a component based. So when we say like model view controller, I was explaining like what is the view. Basically, whatever we see it in the visually represented in the screen is the view with the Visual Force pages, and which interacts to the backend code that's called the Apex controllers. And backend controller is the controller is the one which forms the bridge between the UI and the model. And we're talking about what is the model. We know that we can create a standard object. We can create our own custom objects, and there are like standard objects that are available within the Salesforce, like accounts, cases, leads, or like whatever the objects that comes with it. So it's all built on the model view controller platform architecture, sorry, MEC architecture. This platform is built on the MEC architecture, and we were just discussing about like any object, if you see these are going to be the fields, and each field will have its own data types. And what are the data types that were available? And there are like primitive data types like integer, double, long, date, time, and all those. And with additional to the primitive data types, the object itself can have another object as a field. Like for example, accounts can have the contact as one more field. The contact itself is called the object, right? So this contact will have its own field and with all the data and everything. So this object in Salesforce is called as the S object. That's what we call it. This S object could be like standard object, or it could be the custom object. So that's where we discussed about the primitive data types and the S objects. With additional to those data types, we do have like other data types called collections, arrays, and all these things. Like what is the array and or list to store the multiple data of various data types. It all really depends, like how you declare the variable and initialize the variable. Like if you want to have like multiple names, it's going to be like the string value. And it's all about like how we pump the data to the collection objects, and the collection is all about like storing the data to the objects and then retrieving the data from the objects. And then we talked about this Apex programming, like it's all hosted, and then when we save it, it's going to be compiled and executed on the server, and we don't need to have any other separate commands like Java. We used to have Java C and Java kind of thing. Whenever you save the Apex program, it is going to be saved and it's going to be compiled. And the Apex is object-oriented programming, and it has its own classes, objects, interface inheritance, and all those things. Since it's object-oriented programming, we were discussing about like what is inheritance and all that. And it's all running on a multi-tenant environment in the cloud. So even when database goes down, they're going to serve from the other database. It's all in the clustered environment, which is with the multi-tenant servers. And one of the key features with the Apex programming is that like it's integrated with the database, so you don't have to create any of the connection pooling or any of the connection classes or like driver managers, or like you don't have to write all of this to make a connection to the database. You can literally write the SQL statement within the Apex program, and then it is going to give you the data. And so we were talking about like there are like conditional statements like we do have it in any other language, like if, else, for, loops, while, and all those things. So with that said, one of the key things the Salesforce has from differs from the other object-oriented languages, like so there are like access modifiers, right? So what are the access modifiers? We used to have like so when I'm just comparing with Java, you'll be having like public, private. So these are the like these are the access modifiers, like in terms of like how your class or your object is visible to the other classes on the object. So with additional to these things, we do have one of the additional access modifier in Salesforce called the global. So which means that this modifier, like the global is more wide open, or like it's like more, it gives more permission than the public modifier, which allows the access across like various applications. You can even so in Salesforce we do have like several applications, right? So when you have these applications, like these are the list of applications we do have, like service, marketing, and all those things. So you can even, when you say like global, it is going to be available across the org. So in the Salesforce world, we call it as org. So it's going to be more permissions available when you declare any of the classes or objects, like in the global. So this is one other difference that you can see with other object-oriented language. And we talked about it, like Apex is like just the case insensitive language. All right. So now with that said, so we know that we are going to have the developer environment. So there are like several ways of doing development. One of the things is like you can switch to the developer console from the UI or your org. Like whenever you click on this, you're going to have like developer console. So this is one way of writing the code and then doing the development. So this is where we are going to see like how we can create the Apex classes. And when we're talking about the Apex classes and triggers, we'll be talking about in the classes when we are like how to create the Apex classes and how we can trigger the class from the Visual Force pages, and what are the triggers that is available, and all those things we'll be seeing as part of this course when we're discussing about the Apex. All right.
Karthik,
so
sorry to interrupt. This is Pratap. So in access modifier, I somewhere saw that something named public with sharing and without sharing. So does that also comes under access modifier, or how is it? Is it a totally different topic, or?
No, that's totally a different topic.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so whenever you declare a class, you just declare with like public or the global.
Okay.
That's
there is no
different topic.
Protected private in Salesforce.
It does have it. Yeah, it does have it. So I was just telling the difference. I was just telling that's the different.
Okay. Yeah, fine.
Okay. So does it answer your question?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So so one of the things that we know is like we're going to use the developer consoles where we can write a piece of code and you can execute here and you can see the output and all those things. So with additional to that, we also have the Eclipse IDE. So has any one of you having the Eclipse IDE integrated with your org?
No, not mine.
Okay, so how about Akshat?
Not mine as well.
Okay,
No,
so okay, that's fine. So one of the things, okay, let me pull up so that's one of the things it's very easy. Like you don't have to log in every time into the into developer console. For example, let me see. I can pull my kit. Right. One of the things that I was talking about is we do have a plugin called force.com plugin, where I'll give you the information, where you can just download the plugin and you can drop it in the plugin folder of your Eclipse. And as soon as you can just connect with your org from your Eclipse IDE. So if you see here, it's a first project, and it is integrated, and you can have the. Let me move this go to meeting. It's blocking in this corner. Okay. Yeah. So if you see here, like you can have this run and all those things, and then so you can see all of these components that I have it here with the pages or whatever the Apex classes that we developed so far. So these are all the classes that you can see. So this plugin is called the force.com plugin. You can literally see it here, what are even the lightning component. You can open the lightning. So the view that you see here is on the force.com IDE. So you can open the lightning component from here, the list of lightning components that's available in your org and all this. Okay. So whenever you get a chance, you just try to see if you can download the force.com plugin. I will share that information with you. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So if you see here, the default browser to the Salesforce.com. So this is the perspective that you can see once you get this Force.com IDE plugin. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to tell you what are the different ways of doing a development. So this is one way of doing with the IDE, because most developers just use this IDE, which is more familiar in the industry, the Eclipse, where you can just have the plugin installed and then you can develop your own code. And it pulls all the data from your org. Basically, yeah, this is one of the code that I was writing it. Right. So but initially you can start with, I don't want to recommend you to just immediately want to go, but give it a try to just have this plugin installed in your Eclipse and then get it done, so it will be useful for you. So this is more familiar in the developer community. So the other thing that we have is more common way of using is the console. Okay. All right. So one of the things that I was saying is so out of box, whatever we have it as part of the admin is we do have this page layouts or the record types, everything we defined. Whereas, what is the comparative way of doing it through the programmatical way? In programmatically, you can just create your own Visualforce pages to create your own page layout. So, out of box, it comes with the page layout where we declare the variable, where we create our own record type, and then with the record type, we just mention hey, this record type will be associated with this page layout and with a list of profiles and all that. So similarly, you can just programmatically, you can create your own page layout with the help of Visualforce pages and your components. And similarly, with admin, you can create your own workflow rules or like validation rules, whatever you have, the out of box like approval process. You can do it. Those can be achieved in a programmatic way of writing the Apex controllers or like Apex classes and the Apex triggers. Hey, whenever you just click on a button, what should happen before it injects or before it pumps the data to the database. It's before trigger or after trigger. It could be the trigger could be executed before inserting the database, before inserting the data to the particular object related to the particular object. So those business logics, those can be written through the Apex. And similarly, so we create the objects, fields, and the relationship. And how do you manage them? In the programmatically, you can even create your own REST classes, REST API or the bulk API. You can load the data. Even we can create the data to the admin. So nobody's going to block. You can just go and keep creating your accounts or keep creating your contracts and all that. So, but programmatically, you can still do that by calling the REST APIs and calling the metadata API or the bulk API or anything Even you can even connect to the external services. Like say, for example, we have the news information, right? If you want to have your dashboard or homepage customized, where it brings the news data from the external services, you can integrate by calling the external web services, where you can bring in the data from the external source, and then you can store it in your database, in your Salesforce database. So those are all related to the REST calls and REST APIs and all that. So that's about the comparison between the declarative or how you can achieve through the programmatic way of doing it. And so when you're talking about the way or the flow, how does it work with the Apex? So if you see here, so this is going to be the client. Client is nothing but the browser. Whenever we access our page, so what the user is going to visually see is the Visual Force page. That's where it's called as my page, and it is going to trigger the application logic. The logic is the one the Apex controllers, whatever we write, and either it could be as you said, the data the data could be integrated from the external web service calls, or it could even access the database. So now visually you can just see where those little pieces sit in their respective with their respective roles and their responsibilities, where they all sit and does their own operations, Visual Force page, which is going to trigger the Apex controllers, and the Apex controller is the one which is going to interact with the database, and then everything the response is going to be from the Apex, and then it is going to be back to the client via the cloud. Okay. So if you see the Salesforce provided architecture, the way how it works is going to be okay. So it's going to be like this. So if you see here, so as you said, it's all going to be the cloud based, right? So whenever the developer writes the code, and it's it's going to be whenever we write a class, that's where it's going to be they're going to save it. When you save it in the application server, it gets compiled, and then the compiled Apex is going to be still save it in the data storage. But how are those compiled Apex classes are going to be useful when the end user makes a request? The end user is going to make a request. Say for example, okay, let's say as an example, you have written the applications that gives the bunch of methods to deal with the flights. Say for example, your flight is going to be as a flight, and your methods will be hey, get flight status, or get my reservations, or new bookings, or it could be cancel my reservations, anything like that. Right. So if you see here, say for example, your class is going to be the flights, as an example, right? So you are going to have a bunch of methods get my reservation, get flight status, as an example, and could be new booking, and also like cancel reservations. So something like that. So all of these are going to be as your own method, where it gets its own parameters in those methods, and then it does its own operations from the methods. So when a end user is trying to trigger this class or the methods from the user interface, from the user interface, say for example from the Visual Force pages, what does it do? It connects to the database, it connects to the server, and then it responds back. So that's what I was representing here. When the user makes a request, like for example, when the user wants to know, hey, okay, get me the flight status. So what it does, when the user makes a request, it goes to the Apex server, the compiled code, and it is going to get the response to the end user through the cloud. So if you see here, this is how it works. Like it makes a request, and then it's going to be at the runtime, and it's going to get the runtime response from the database. It's going to get the data back, like based on like whatever the method is getting executed. So that's when the compiled Apex code, whatever it's in the data storage, is going to be back to the server, and then it is going to process it and then sending the response to the end user. So it's all based on the interactions that you do from the Visual Force pages, or like it could be from the any of the view or the UI of the Salesforce. Okay. Any questions?
No.
Okay. So these are in terms of like architecture and the data types and the variables and all this. All right. So if you see here, like in the developer console, like okay, so okay, let's say that so you can go and create a new Apex class, like my training test one as an example, right? So this is going to be the default one, where we create a class, and we can define our bunch of methods. Like okay, so public static, I would say like print data, something like that. And so this is going to be the class. This is going to be the Apex class, and this is going to be the method. Like okay. So even before that, let's talk about like what is the class and what is the object. So let's talk a little bit about what is the class and what is the object. So the class is nothing but it's going to be the representation of the data and its actions. Data and actions, right? So for example, so let's take a real-time scenarios, like about a movie theater. The class is going to be like like a theater or like a movie theater, right? So if you see it here, what are the things that the class can have? It has its data. Like the data could be like for example, it could be like string, declared as a string as like name of the turtle, name, or like or it could be like it could have the data like integer, like number of tickets reserved, all those things, like or like it could be like amount, which is of the data type, like it could be the integer again, and amount and all these things. Right. So what are the things that you could do? These are the data, right? What are the things? What are the actions that can be done from this data? Like say for example, if you want to do like reserve, new reservation. Yeah, you could do this new reservation, or cancel reservation, or it can be seat selection, So if you see, these are the actions that are taken based on the data. So if you see a class, it's going to have the data, and based on the data, you're going to have a set of actions. So actions are nothing but in the Salesforce or like any other object-oriented programming languages, we call it as methods. So it is going to have the methods which can operate on the data. And you can create an object out of the class, which is object is nothing but a blueprint of the class. And it can have the properties of the class. So that is what it is called as the class and the object. Okay. So when we declare a class, like, Apex class, so we create an Apex class from this console like this. And then we define like, okay, so the public static print data. You would wonder like, so what is this public static void? I would say like, void here. So what is this? So now we know that what is this class, and the class is going to have a bunch of actions and nothing but a method. The class is going to have a bunch of methods, right? So how the method can be defined. So this is going to be the access modifier, and we'll talk about the static in a bit. And this is going to be the return type of the method. Say for example, if you're going to have in this method, like if you're going to have like new reservation, like once you go through the reservation process, you're going to return the return message saying that reservation has been successfully made, like successful transaction. So how does your method respond, or how does your method, what does, when you call a method, what does it gives back? That is what is called as the return type. I mean, it's not necessary that your method should always have the return type. Your method might just have the null, or like might have the void. The reason why we are having the void is it's not going to return anything, but it is going to do its job. Like for example, you could say like cancel reservation, and sometimes you deliver a message saying that hey, your reservation has been successfully cancelled, right? But it's not really. So in that case, it is going to have the the method is going to return something like or like hey, what is the operation, or like what is the logic, or what is the computation that I did, and it is going to respond back. There are a few things like you can have the helper class, a helper method. There is something called like a helper method. Helper method, which does its operations internally, right? It does not. It might not necessary that it has to return something to the caller method. So this is called like he's the caller. He's the caller, and then this method is being called. Okay. So there are certain things. There are like scenarios where your method can have the return type, or it might not have the return data type. In that case, we are going to use the void. If you see here, I'm just going to put like simply void, which means that it's not going to return anything. For example, I'm going to just simply write this. Simply like a code like always in Java we used to write like system.out.println or whatever like that. Here it's going to be like system. For the debugging purpose, you can have this system.debug. This is my first method. Like method trying an example. All right. So this is a class and this is the method. Like, okay, how can we invoke the method? You can even invoke the method by creating the object, right? I mean, creating the object, you can create it. But one of the things that I want to say, like, if you want to test your code, you can always use this Apex code. Like, it's not that necessarily you have to create your own class and then have it here. This Apex code can be tested with this little console, whatever the Salesforce is providing. But mostly these classes will be used, or like, will be used in the Apex trigger, or it can be it can be initiated or it can be triggered from the Visual Force components or the Visual Force pages. Okay. So in this case, if you're saying like, okay, like what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to create a object from the class, or I can even just call the method directly, training test dot print data, right? So if you just execute this, it's going to say that, when you're compiling, I told you like, I told you very clearly, whenever you're just saving it, that time itself it is going to compile and it is going to provide you the error. It says that, method does not exist or the incorrect signature. Okay. So can you tell me, Pratap, like, why is this error coming? That's fine. That's fine. I mean, don't worry about it. The reason is I did not even save this class, so the system doesn't know this. So you might wonder. I mean, most of the time I used to have this. I don't save it, and then this error is popping up, right? So because I did not save it, because you could see like, everything is correct, like, class name and the object name. Sorry, the class name dot method name. Okay. So let me save this class first. You can just go on file and then save it. So we have to save this, and it's getting saved. And when you execute now, it is going to execute. It's loading. It's going to execute, and you can see all your debug message here, and this is going to tell you the list of steps that the Salesforce compiler is doing it on the runtime environment. So if you want to see only your output, you can even filter only by the debug only. This debug only is going to give the debug output. Like, you can just, it's going to be very cleaner output, like whatever you specify. This is just like, this is my first method. Okay, from the training. Okay. So this is one of the things. So were you aware of this before?
Yes. Means very recently, from 15 days, as I told, after creating a developer org, I'm trying these things. Yeah, not experienced, but just I know, that's all.
Right. That's good. Yeah, I just want to tell you, like, okay. So like, this is how you can be tested. You can create a class and you can write a method and then you can get it executed. Okay. One of the things one of the things that you can see here, we have mentioned it as static. So if the method that you write does not have any reference to the member of your class data, I mean, if it does not refer to any of the data, if it does not refer to any of the data from the class, we can make it static. In that case, you don't have to essentially create an object. You can directly call. Say, for example, if I just take out the static, okay? If I take out the static, yes. If I just take it out, and if I'm going to run the command from the debug, it is going to throw an error saying that, what is the error? I mean, these are the things. So that they'll be asking in the certification exams, like, because the error that you can see it here is like, this is from the non-static context.
Yeah.
This can be done only in the static context. So your method cannot be called in the non-static context. So you have to create an object to access the method. So if you execute, your non-static method cannot be referenced from the static context. So what you're doing is you're calling the non-static method from the static context. Just your context is the static, because you're calling the class name dot object name, which is the static context, and you're calling the non-static method. Non-static method cannot be referenced from the static context. Why? Okay. So in that case, it's just going to be like, whenever you want to create an object, the way how it works is like, you have to have it as class name, class, this is going to be a skeleton, okay?
Okay.
This is going to be an object equal to new class. So when you say like the new class, your object is going to be created with the blueprint of your class, and anything with any methods or any methods can be accessed within your object, like, your object dot. Instead of, currently it's in the static mode, we are calling directly the class dot object, but when it is a non-static you're going to have the object slash method name. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, similarly, I mean, you can just doing your hands-on, like, you can just have your variable declared, like, string name equal to test name, like, like you can do all the string operations, like, when you want to just do the concatenations, you can just have like name, something like that.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I just don't want to go much detail about like string concatenation or declaring the integer variable and then a plus b and all those things. So you might have already know all those, and we don't want to spend time in creating those variables and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is one way of developing it, without the Eclipse IDE. The developer console, you can just go and write your classes and then you can declare the variables from there. So whatever we have learned today about the data types and all those things, you can do it. And similarly, like, you can even create your list objects. Like, there are like a couple of ways to create a list object. Say, for example, if you want to create a list object, you can declare the list as, if you want to have the list string, I'm just naming the multiple, so it's called as names otherwise. Okay, it could be like new list. Like if you see here, I'm creating a collection object of list, which can I'm just specifying the object. The list itself is a class here. Okay, the list, as I said, that if you look at the skeleton that I gave here, like it's going to be the object equal to the new class, right? So the list itself is like a collection object. And then you're just creating a new object with the keyword called new list, and then you're having a string. It can have all of the string. So the other way of doing this is like you can even just put like string array names equal to like new list string. It's all the same. These two things are same. Like if you just have these two here, have it like this. These two are exactly the same. So it's like the different way of doing things. The one with like the following. It's like two declarations are equal. The only thing is that the first declaration has been done based on the syntax of list, and the second one is like it has been done declared as an array. And but it's been declared as an array, and it was like but it was assigned to the list rather than an array. So just again like it was assigned to the list. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, with the list, like what are the things that you can do with additional to the privilege data? What are the things that you can do with the list? Is like you can just keep on. Okay, for now I'm just okay. So one of the thing is like you can just comment our. This is one other thing like in the developer like you can just have this comment. You can comment it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to just have like names dot add. So when you have it, your console itself will give you the list of methods that's available out of box. Like you can select like list of add, like shared. So sorry. So this is just creating the list objects and adding the data to it. Okay.
Okay.
And then so in this class I'm just telling you like I'm just blending together everything. I'm not teaching the multiple classes to talk about the primitive data type or to talk about what is the Apex and to talk about the developer console or like different ways of doing the development with the Eclipse IDE, and you're talking about everything blended together overall, right? All those basic things, and how to get started with the development and how you can start working on your hands-on. Okay.
Yeah.
And so for like a conditional statement, if you want to see like let's all those like conditional statements we have discussed, like if else like Similarly, you can use like, the for statements to loop through it, like for integer, let's say I equal to 0, and then, I less than names dot size. That is going to give you the size. Names dot size, I plus plus. So if you say like, system dot debug, then it's going to be, you're going to retrieve from the names, right? Names of so you can use the shortcut like Control S. I'm just telling you that to let you know that how you can save. I just don't want to just click on using my control here like Control S, and then and not to save it. I just want to give you a feel that I'm saving it. Okay, that's why I'm just going and clicking to save. Okay. So when you click on this, you can just right here in the dynamic window the debug, and then click on it. Okay, so I should be using this here, public static. So now you understood like what are the access modifiers and what is the static that we're going to use and what is the void of return type. So we'll talk about this return type a little later on the print data. All right.
Size spelling, yes, size Z E is not there.
Yeah. I'm having unrecognized. Number 4. Okay. One other thing is like we have to have a single quotes in the string. Okay. So in okay, it's good thing that we are going through this error. Like always in the Visual in the Salesforce, the string has been declared or like defined or initialized. We have to use the single quotes. Okay.
Okay.
I don't see any errors. So the thing is that I just specifically mentioned or like on purpose I just made this so that you can see while you're saving you can see all these problems. In the problems tab you can see all of this. Like it's going to tell you immediately. It's going to compile and tell you like what is the compilation problem that you have, compilation errors that you have. Okay.
Yeah.
And let me go and execute. So you can see like I'm printing this what are the name that I added, and it's printing outside the method. So within the method it's printing and it's printing outside the method. Okay. All right. So let me close out this. If you see here, so I'm just using the conditional statement of for loop, and I'm system.debug, and I'm printing the value from this list object like names of I. Okay. Wherever it's stored, like Akshat was stored in the place of 0, and Pratap was stored as the name. Sorry, in the first place, like So that's why it's coming like names of 0 objective. What we saved is Akshat, and the second one is Pratap, and that's what it's printing it here. Okay, it just printed both the names, and then outside the method, it is printing this value. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is how we can start your hands-on with creating the class, declaring the variables, and having your methods, and triggering your method. Okay. And if you want to see, like, one of the things, like, when you're talking about the classes and the methods, that could be a possibility of passing the argument within the method. Like, we call it as an argument passing within the method. Within the method, if you see, like, the argument can be passed. Like, it could be like, any argument can be passed. It could be like of any data type. For example, like, if you want to pass, like, string, as an example, like, string name, name one, or like, string, I can just mention it as like value. Okay. If I'm going to call this, all I'm going to do is, like, after this, I'm just printing this. I'm just going to do like, replace this with value. Whatever I'm going to pass, the value is going to be printed as part of this class. It's going to be within the method. Okay, this is the method. The method ends here, and it is printing the value. Okay. So when I'm trying to, who is going to be the invoker? This guy is the invoker, right? This guy is invoking. So when I'm invoking, okay, so when I'm invoking, I'm also going to tell this, like, I'm going to pass an argument of, for example, Karthik. For example, let's execute. If you just go here and do this debug only, you can see, like, the training Karthik has been there. So in that way, what I'm trying to tell you here is, like, when you're talking about the class, when you're talking about the method, the method can be, arguments can be passed to the method. For example, like, let's go back to our original real-time scenarios. The real-time scenarios, like, here we are getting the cancel reservations. The real-time scenario, cancel reservation, what will be your input? You need the reservation code, right? Like, it will be like an integer reservation code or a code, something like that. So when you get this, you can go and do all your logic based on this input, and then you can have the return type. So, okay, now when we're talking about the return type, for example, here, right? So this method does not return anything. It just no return type, and it does not return anything. So I'm just having it as void. Void is nothing but it's empty. We used to tell, like, void my check. It has nothing. Yeah, so that's why I say, like, void my check or void the invoice, something like that, right? It's like it does nothing, and it doesn't return anything or anything like that. Whereas if you want to return something, you have to specify the return data type here, right? So that is what this return type is all about. Like, for example, you're just saying, like, the return type could be like, it's just a data type. What type of data that is going to be returned? It could be a string, or it could be an integer, or it could be like, any object. If it's like an object kind of thing, you'll have to specify the object name, like account or whatever. The account itself is an object, something like that. Okay. In this case, we'll just simply return the string that we get. So the string is the data type. Whatever the value that I'm passing, I'm just going to return that value. Return that value. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not going to print it here. I'm not going to print it here. You see it here. I'm just printing only, this is my first method training, and the value that I'm passing is not printed anywhere. We are not doing anything. Okay. And if you just save it, that will be a problem. The problem is like missing return statements required to return type string. So you are saying the method needs to return a string, but there is no return at all. So that is why it is complaining. It's complaining that missing the return statement. As long as you have the return data type, you must return the value with the data type. That's what the compilation error is saying. Okay. So immediately when you do the control save, it will tell you the problem, what exactly the problem is. And for example, once after this method, right before this method, what you need to do is like it's going to be like a return value. Your value is a string, right? So it's going to return the same string. Okay.
Okay.
So as soon as this problem is gone. Now, this guy is the invoker. You go and you open it, and this guy is the invoker, right? So when you execute, it is still able to execute, and then it will give you the output as let's see here, Akshat Pratap, this is within the method, and this is my first method training. Like, this is going to be from your this is from your training. That's all. But it is not printing any of the value that we pass. Okay. So how do we get the value? Like, whoever is invoking this method, for example, whoever is invoking this method, right? So this is the invoker, right? So you can just have string return value equal to, you're passing some value here, right? And then you can print it here, something like system.debug to check, like, if the return type is valid. This is the return type, return value. Okay, this is the return data from the method. And then you're going to print the return value here. So now if you see here, so it comes, this is within the for loop, you're printing it. First you saved the data and you created a list and you saved the data. Here this is within the for loop, and this is outside the for loop within your method, and this is from the invoker. You are not printing this. This is the return data from the method Karthik. Whatever you are passing, that is coming back. That's what your logic here is. You're passing the argument and you are returning. It doesn't really mean that whatever the data type you pass should be the return. Even you can have this boolean here, and you can write the logic here. If value equal to Karthik, return true or false, something like that. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is, it's not necessarily that whatever you pass it here, the same data type should be returned. You can pass any data type here, and you can do all your computation within this method. You can write all your logic and everything in your Apex method, and then you can return with a completely different data type. Okay. So for example, think of the real-time scenario here. You're trying to cancel, right? You're trying to cancel the reservation. Okay. When you pass your code, when you pass your integer, like, this is my reservation code, you go to the database and delete the record, or like you mark the particular record as a, like, the reservation has been cancelled. You update your database or the database rows, and then return the true or false. If true, just tell that, you are telling that, if your returning is true, then the invoker method will display your reservation has been cancelled successfully. Okay. For some reason, if your logic has an issue with the database, or if the reservation value cannot find, they are giving some code like 1275. That's the code, but there are no such reservation code is available in the system. Whereas the user is giving the wrong data. In that case, you are going to return the false, saying that this reservation code was not updated, or was not able to find, and this database operation what I am trying to do is not successful. I'm returning false. So your reservation is not cancelled, something like that. We can deliver the message based on the flag that we are receiving, right? And if it couldn't find, we can even return the value as a proper string value. This reservation code does not exist, something like that, something that's meaningful. Okay, so which means that it's about like passing an argument to the method and then returning with the return type. Okay. All right. So with that said, we'll wind up today's class, and in the next session we'll be talking about more of a Salesforce language. How to insert the data to the object, how to retrieve the data from the object, how you can do all those DML operations. What is the DML operations? Like, what is called DML in the Salesforce, like, data manipulation language. How to write your own queries, and how you can write the query and then insert it into your class, Apex class, and all those things. Okay. And here it's like illegal conversion of string to boolean. So you're returning the string and then your return type is boolean. So that's why it's complaining here. Okay. Either you have to have it as, or you can just, Sorry.
True or
Let me
false?
check. Yeah, true or false. I thought of other reason I thought of just changing this to the 0 and then having it as integer here.
For that, some wrapper or something is required, I guess, right?
For which one?
To convert string to boolean or something.
Hey,
Some
that's a
wrapper.
typecasting. Yeah, that's like a typecasting. You can cast your
Okay.
data type. So we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
that's why it was complaining. So like today we were talking about like all the primitive data types, and today's session was like we did not take too much of time. This like if the people who doesn't know development, this class will go like for like 3 classes or something like that, because we're talking about the basics of Apex and the primitive data types and the arrays or the list, the collection data types, and what is the class, what is the object, what is the method, and how we can pass the argument to the method, how we can retrieve the return data, and what is static, and you are able to invoke the method, and then after creating the classes and the objects, we are able to invoke the method. So the next class we'll be going through more of the like how we can insert the data programmatically into the, we know that, you can go and create manually the data into the Salesforce, how you can insert the data into the Salesforce to the programmatically, how we can do the bulk upload or bulk insert or bulk retrieval, all those things you will be able to learn in the Apex class, through the Apex class, how we can do the DML operations. Okay. So far whatever we learned today or we discussed today, was it useful or can we go in this direction, or do you have any feedback in the class?
No, nothing, Karthik. Only thing is going forward, we'll be looking into those maps and all, right? Maps, a little bit of confusion is there. And going forward, we might have to look into it, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. We'll talk in detail about So I'm just going to along with the Salesforce objects, we'll be using most of the data types and all those arrays and lists and everything. So the collection objects and everything, along with the objects that is in Salesforce. So in that we'll try to get a chance to learn with the Salesforce objects. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we'll not be using like a string or this is just the first class of declaring the string and everything. So that we just want to get the basic. I just don't want to directly jump into that objects and what is that object underscore C and all those things.
Yeah.
So so we'll talk about all the other collection objects and as we progress through. Okay. And how we can write the SQL query and how we can execute the SQL query through the code and everything. So the next class will be like a DML operation.
Okay.
Do you have any feedback, Akshat? You're able to follow? Do you have any feedback or do you have any recommendation, suggestions? Akshat there. Oh, Akshat, yeah, not here. Do you have any feedback, Akshat, either the class or were able to follow? Is everything clear? I think you might be in mute. All right. Thanks, Pratap and Akshat. So we'll meet on Wednesday. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Karthik.
So yeah, thanks. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Bye.